Thank you for joining me for this book review of The Coaching Habit by Michael Bungay Stanier. I'm guessing you're here because you want to level up your leadership and expand your growth mindset by taking some time to review your own leadership philosophy. Please consider how more coaching may help you be a better leader and foster growth on your team. In the book, the author describes the power of coaching as a leadership philosophy. He even calls it a habit. He describes the real advantages of this approach, and I'll highlight a few of those shortly. But I want to point out one very important insight. For you to truly be an effective coach, you must also be genuinely curious. As you heard in the book's intro, Chris Yates talks about this key ingredient to coaching. Take the time to foster curiosity throughout your life. Not only will it help you become a better coach and leader, but curiosity will also help strengthen almost any relationship. I've had the fortunate pleasure to work with and for some very fine leaders, all with a variety of backgrounds and personalities. But the one thing those leaders have in common, they were all extremely curious and asked amazing questions. In fact, I'm not sure one of them ever actually answered a question. They all taught me to be self-sufficient and resilient. So try to foster curiosity throughout this video and corresponding exercise. And to quote Chris Yates from the book's intro, stay curious. So why a coaching habit? Besides the fact that coaching done right will bring you and your team better and more sustainable results, you can unlock that person's potential. You work with less effort but have more impact. You reduce your team's overdependence on you. You reduce your own overwhelm by removing yourself as a bottleneck for work and decisions. And you stay more connected to your team. So take a moment and ask yourself these 3 questions. How could asking more questions reduce your team's dependence on you? What's a recent example of this? And how could asking more questions intrinsically motivate your team? In the rest of this review, I'll highlight the best parts of the book and help teach you practical coaching skills. I'll explain ways to build these skills into your day-to-day activities to help you become a more impactful leader while improving your engagement in your team's performance. My name's Rob. I'm a business leader, professional, and accredited executive coach. The coaching habit building concepts in this book are simple but not easy. Even as a professionally trained coach, and in the heat of the moment, I sometimes forget to coach. Changing your approach, perspective, and mindset will take time and deliberate effort. This includes growing and fostering a keen sense of curiosity as it relates to your team and their work. If you're truly committed to changing, I suggest you find a coach, mentor, or accountability partner to help you through this process. The author provides you 7 great questions to help you begin to build a coaching habit. We'll review each question later, but I've broken this book review into 4 sections. In the first section, I'll cover the problem with advice. Next, we'll talk about how to build a habit. Then we'll cover the author's 7 questions. And finally, a special bonus, I'll give you a mini coaching masterclass with some pro tips I've learned throughout my leadership and executive coaching experience. Let's get started. So what's the problem with advice? Please take a few minutes and think about it. Please answer the following questions. When was the last time you received advice? How much of it did you follow? And how did it turn out? In leadership and in general, advice is often overused and ineffective. For example, excessive advice can feel like micromanagement, which can stifle creativity and autonomy. Also, people may have different opinions on how to approach a problem. This often leads to conflict and creates confusion, making it difficult to make progress. And that's if you're actually working on the right problem. And, as I mentioned earlier, relying too heavily on advice can hinder personal growth and problem-solving skills. Plus, it puts a burden on you as the leader. When was the last time you suffered from decision fatigue? The better option, be curious, ask great questions, and coach. Coaching empowers individuals to find their own solutions and develop their own skills. Here's what it does. It fosters ownership and accountability, develops critical thinking and problem-solving skills, strengthens relationships, builds trust, and improves communication. And it improves results and makes them more sustainable. When was the last time you truly coached someone on your team? What were you curious about, and how did it turn out? Take a few minutes and think about that now. As I just mentioned, coaching clearly has some advantages, but how do you build a coaching habit? The author gives us some great insights in the chapter, How to Build a Habit. I'll highlight a few of those insights in this next section, but I suggest studying this chapter in more detail. The bottom line is this, and I'll quote the author here. The change of behavior at the heart of what this book is about is this: a little more asking people questions and a little less telling them what to do. I'll repeat that. A little more asking people questions and a little less telling them what to do. Again, this sounds simple, but as the author states, and I mentioned earlier, simple does not mean easy. The author quotes a Duke University study suggesting that at least 45% of behavior is habitual. Thus, a big chunk of our behavior is not controlled consciously. So, to change our behavior, we must change our habits. The best example of this in my life is my journaling habit. For over a year, I tried and failed miserably to journal every day. Willpower and good intentions really let me down. It wasn't till I considered creating a journaling habit that I was able to overcome my failure. I'm happy to say that I enthusiastically write in my journal every day. Rarely do I miss a day, but when I do, it's often because my daily routine was thrown out of sync, an early flight, or some other change in my normal routine. According to the author, you need 5 essential components to build an effective new habit. 1, a reason. 2, a trigger. 3, a micro habit. 4, effective practice. And 5, a plan. In my journaling example, I made all 5 of these components part of my habit creation process, and it worked. I suggest getting very specific and foster deep self-awareness when developing a new habit. I suggest writing the 5 components down and building a documented plan. Yes, write it down. The author also suggests being short and specific with your new habit, and then practice. Deep practice is better, and see the book for that. This process also goes for when you're trying to change or drop an old habit. The author suggests some of the following pro tips. Start easy, start small, buddy up with a coach, friend, or colleague, and don't give up when you have a small setback. Build resilience. And remember, I suggest studying this chapter in more detail. I also suggest a wonderful book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. He really gets into the science of habits. But before we go to the next section, what is one habit you want to change or new habit you want to start? Take a few minutes and think about that now. Next, I wanted to quickly review each of the 7 questions the author describes in the book. And while I love these questions, please don't limit yourself. As you foster genuine curiosity and learn to be a better listener, you will know which questions to ask. Your coaching conversation should not be scripted. These questions are tools to help you get started or when you get stuck. When you're curious, you will come up with your own questions. Let's go through them quickly, and here we go. The first question, what's on your mind? This is a great question to get someone started. It also allows you as the leader to assess their state of mind. Did they seem like they're having a good day? Are they overwhelmed? What's going on with them in the moment? The second question, and what else? I love this question. It's been a game changer for me in many executive coaching sessions. It's helped spark insights for several of my clients. It challenges the person you're coaching to pause and think of what they might have missed. Be sure to leave room for silence and let the person take time to answer. I've seen real magic with this question. The third question is the focus question. What's the real challenge here for you? Often the problem you think your team is having is not the real problem. By not deeply questioning, you may provide a solution or create administrative work that misses the real problem completely. Remember, as the author called out in the book, jumping in to fix things without properly understanding the problem can lead to a few of these issues. 1. You work on the wrong problem. 2. You do the work your team should be doing. And 3. The work doesn't get done. Again, you could be solving the wrong problem. Remember, there is real possibility they're describing things that are not the real problem, and you've trained your team to come to you instead of doing the work themselves. Asking the focusing question and using your curiosity will help you dig deep to identify the real problem. It helps you to slow things down and get to the root. So, what's an example of when you could ask this question? Take a few minutes and think about that now. The fourth question, what do you want? Or sometimes I prefer, what do you really want? This is the foundation question. This simple question challenges the person to really go deep. But please keep the following points in mind. Most people don't know what they want. What they really want is often unsaid. And understand the difference between wants and needs. Listen to the need behind the want. Through your keen observation, recognize that need. The author also reminds us that sometimes sharing our own answer to the question can help increase the question's impact. So I ask you, what do you want? Or what do you really want? The fifth question, how can I help? This question is the lazy question because you're inviting the other person to take the lead in defining the problem and seeking solutions. This approach not only helps you to provide more effective assistance, but also empowers the other person to develop their own problem-solving skills. How easy is that? If someone asks you for your advice, tell them you'd like to hear their thoughts first. You might even ask them what makes this subject important to them. It may not be as obvious as it seems. And remember, you can always say no or offer another choice. Avoid the drama and you'll be fine. The sixth question, if you're saying yes to this, what are you saying no to? The strategic question. I love this question. I use it often when coaching. This question helps you identify what's most important. It's also fundamental in Greg McKeown's books, Essentialism and Effortless. And remember, in the same chapter, this author suggests banning the word busy. So let's think about this. The most effective leaders I know present themselves with a calm and focused intensity. They do not scramble around. They embody a deliberate, undistracted nature. They know what's important, what to say no to, and where to focus. How many times have you tried to have a conversation with someone else that was preoccupied with their phone, engaged in a team or Slack chat, or some other nonsense? They're distracted and not focused. How could they possibly help you? The best leaders I know focus on being in the present, eliminate distractions, and don't multitask. If you're saying yes to this, what are you saying no to? Before we go to the next section, think about the situation I just described. When have you shown up for a team member frantic, distracted, and unfocused? And finally, question 7. What was most useful for you? The learning question. I love this question too, but sometimes this question is misunderstood as asking for feedback or affirmation. However, this question encourages the person you're asking to think through the discussion and assess possible insights from a new perspective. This question and exercise often brings more clarity and emphasis to understanding and learning. So I ask you, what was most useful for you so far? I hope you're beginning to see how much more effective a coaching habit in leadership can be. As promised, I want to share some of my pro tips in a mini coaching masterclass. But before we do, I have one more question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it to you to add more coaching and less telling in your daily routine? Okay, my pro tips for coaching include some obvious and not so obvious insights. First, you should work to become a better listener. Even as a trained coach, listening is a skill I continuously work to master. It takes work and effort. Remember, if you're thinking about what to say or ask while the other person is still talking, you are not listening. Secondly, try to avoid questions that start with why. Why, you ask? Why questions can sometimes be perceived as accusatory or judgmental. This can put the person you're asking on the defensive, making them less likely to open up and share their thoughts and feelings honestly. Why questions can also limit the depth of the conversation. They often lead to simple, surface-level answers that don't provide much insight into the person's underlying thoughts and emotions. And why questions can keep the conversation focused on the past rather than the future. Instead, ask how, what, where, and when questions. For example, instead of asking why do you feel that way, you might ask what are you feeling right now? Or how did that make you feel? These questions are more likely to elicit thoughtful and insightful responses from the person you're coaching. You may have already noticed, but none of the author's questions start with why. Next, don't stack questions. Stacking questions could make the person feel like they're being interrogated. And also, I suggest avoiding small talk and chit-chat before starting a coaching conversation. When there's an important topic to discuss, get right to it. If you don't, the focus at the issue at hand gets lost in the minutia. Save the chit-chat for later, break time, or some other appropriate time. Unfortunately, many leaders think chit-chat is a necessary icebreaker before an important conversation, but in fact, it can have the opposite effect. Asking about their kids and family when a real conversation is necessary can cause confusion and seem insincere. Save it for later. Instead, focus on being a great coach and amazing listener. Thus, make coaching conversations short, direct, and informal if you can. This will allow short and impactful interactions with your team. And finally, leave room for silence. This sounds so easy, but I assure you it is not. Over the next couple days, when you ask a question, consciously leave room for silence. It's much more difficult than you think. So, who do you know that enjoys the silence? Before I summarize, I have one more bonus thought. The paradox of leadership is this. The higher you rise and the more responsibilities you gain as a leader, the less it becomes about you. The best leaders learn this early. Your ego is your enemy. Lose your ego, set high expectations, and put your team first. What are some of the ways you can put your team before yourself? In summary, I'll leave you with 3 final thoughts. First, instill coaching and a coaching habit into your leadership. If you don't believe me, just try it. I know you'll be surprised with the results. Second, learn to build new habits, replace old habits, and develop your knowledge and skills on the science of habits. This skill will serve you well. And finally, foster your curiosity. Stop giving orders and advice. It's okay to set high expectations, but ask more questions. The best leaders I know are calm, focused, and curious. So long and happy coaching.